We love genre, the show for readers who think that a pleasant hike in Alaska should include glaciers, fresh air, and absolutely zero encounters with the hellscape.
That's a reasonable request, to be honest.
We are reading every short story in Ann and Jeff VanderMeer's anthology, The Weird, including this one, Merritt's The People of the Pit. I'm Zach, and this week I am interested in these crazy descriptions. These, I mean, not of the hellish stuff, but of the just normal, everyday human descriptions given here.
I'm Bob. I'm interested in campfire stories. Zach, last week I loved The Vegetable Man because it felt like a campfire story. Here it's an actual campfire story. So these strange images, here we got it. You ask and you shall receive. This is, I think it's interesting because it's not exactly a portal. But there's these two guys, they're out hiking. They're going to go and find something incredible, but they're taking a break. They're by the fire. And then just this creepy little thing runs up on them and tries to climb up them. And they realize, what on earth is this? Oh, it's a man. And the man, he's missing his hands. He's got really stubby arms and legs. And every time they get him to calm down, he's still going like this. Like he's climbing out of something, like he's trying to climb out of a pit. And then he goes on to this narration of where he has been. And where he has been is truly a hellscape, Zach. Whoa.
Okay, so they're looking for these mountains, which are like 5 fingers. And what this person tells them is that in between them is a valley with a staircase. When you descend it, there are things that the devil made before the flood that have somehow escaped God's vengeance. So some antediluvial beings are rolling around there. And he calls them the people of the pit. My God. I guess my first question for you, Bob, is what do you make of this structure here? I mean, we never actually see anything firsthand. Does it need to have anything seen firsthand? Does it work?
I mean, the same thing with the Rabindranath story. It's two friends talking about, these hungry stones and talking about, they're overhearing it. They're overhearing this ghost story, essentially. And here we have the two guys and this other guy who comes up crawling and tells them the whole story. For me, I think I really like it because it is kind of not just a cautionary tale for a general purpose. It's a, look, I was just right over there. I know you want to go over there. Do not. It's a warning, a direct warning. And I think it's, maybe I shouldn't say that. I feel like it's scarier than actually going with him in real time. Maybe not. But I think seeing how traumatized he is, and here's a little quote to show like what he looks like. It says, the hands themselves were stumps. The fingers had been bent into the palms and the flesh had been worn to the bone. So he has been so terrified of what he has seen that he's just destroyed his body. So I think seeing that makes it extra scary for me. What do you think?
I think that with this one, the effect of what he's seen and his escape upon his body is way more visceral and way more scary than what he actually describes when he gets down there. He describes these beings of light, for example, that under a different aspect, under a different mode of seeing, are these snail-like creatures. It's like a classic horror moment where it's the dread leading up to it that is what makes a horror film so effective. But then when they finally show the monster, you're like, oh, all right, sure. But it's leading up. When he's talking to them, and he'll just break out into these kinds of trances or reveries. We have, quote, the crawling man stopped. His eyes rolled up into his head. He trembled and his arms and legs began their horrible crawling movement. From his lips came a whispering. It was an echo of the high murmuring we had heard the night he came to us. I put my hand over his eyes. He quieted. It's almost like psychological realism in his trauma, but cranked up to cartoonish levels. It's really fun.
It is like a cartoon. I think one thing that might be different too, this, when it came out, I think it came out in 1918, is that right? 1918, and it was a huge smash hit. I read part of a biography I want to go into later that came with his novel called The Moon Pool. I can't find out who wrote the biography, but it's got a lot of good information. But the author of that also is saying that when this came out, People of the Pit and The Moon Pool came out, the original novelette, The Moon Pool, he was just skyrocketed. Abraham Grace Merritt was skyrocketed into fame. And he compared it to being William Gibson coming out with Neuromancer, and just immediately everyone is talking about Neuromancer, and people still talk about it, 30 years later, 25 years later. So I wonder if it was really terrifying when it came out, and maybe it's not as terrifying now, because to me, it feels a lot like, specifically, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, where you're being surrounded by all of these fairies. It feels like a video game where there are these kind of video game creatures that you have to contend with. And I imagine reading that for the first time, because it is extremely vivid. You can definitely see through the description, very masterly description, exactly what he's trying to describe. And now it feels like Ghastly from Pokemon or the fairies from Majora's Mask. I've seen it. It's not too scary, and I know how to beat it. But I think at the time, especially when you play a game like that for the first time, it's thrilling. So I think this story probably was also amazing when it came out, and very scary, I bet.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. It might be 2025 brain that's kind of more skeptical about this, especially because, the only person we've seen encounter these monsters happens to get away and, survive for the telling, at least. Not survive till the end, but survive for the telling.
So sad.
But if it's like a power level indicator, if he had to crawl past a mountain of human skulls of people who had gone in there and perished, that's a slightly different indication. It actually seems, I don't want to say easy to get away, but he did it.
Yeah, but he lost his hands and feet. That doesn't sound very. Oh, it's a trifle. It's but a scratch. I'm
thinking scratching is probably one of the last things he's not going to be able to do from here on out.
No, that poor guy. I think, yes, it's not that hard to get out, but there is something also that's terrifying, that is also terrifying about a lot of the cosmic horror stories, where it's not really the thing that you encounter, because if you over-explain it, like we've said, it's not scary, but it's the journey there. And this story does a really good job of kind of breaking your brain a little bit, because the way it describes this chasm, this huge, it's got the 5 fingers, and it's described as if the 5 fingers are trying to cover this canyon so no one can get in it. And he says it's even bigger than the Grand Canyon. But then it feels like what is up becomes down, and what is down becomes up, and everything gets so disorienting. And as he goes down into this impossible place, it becomes a staircase, and it starts to make sense until he gets to a city where people are made of light. And I think it's an interesting experience to have your spatial awareness in a book completely turn topsy-turvy, and you have to figure out what you're seeing. Even though I said it's clear, it's also very disorienting. And so in that respect, I think it's very hard for him to get out. I know it's just stairs, but it's a lot more than stairs.
So that's one of the things I really love about the story is how intentional, like, every detail feels. I mean, there's so many great details in this story. You mentioned the staircase. The author gives us like the angle that it's going down, which has the effect of making the world feel like pre-built, if that makes sense. Like, it's not just like a haphazard bunch of stones, turn into staircase, or just a trail leading down. It's like, it feels like there's a kind of real intelligence and craftsmanship behind it. And that is a really good, I don't want to say world building. That's kind of a cheap way to talk about it, but that's just like a good vibe setting detail, I think.
Good vibe setter. It's matching the energy. I think, yes, 100%. Whenever there's a staircase going down, whenever there's something that feels intentional, but it's so ancient, it's completely outside of human history, and maybe it's malicious, maybe it's going to get us, maybe it's like, it just gives me the image of like there being a huge creature under the plates that will one day just wake up and swallow us whole, like the Cascadian subduction zone. But if you like this story or Mountains of Madness, it reminds me a lot of The White Vault, which is a great podcast or radio drama that has the same feeling. Zach, I wanted to know what you thought about... we've been reading a lot of stories in the weird that have a kind of obsession. When we read The Spider, the kid in there, the student, becomes obsessed with this woman who's just across from him on the other window, so much so that they're mirroring each other in every movement they do. And we find out, she's this evil spider creature who's going to devour him, or at least murder him, or at least make him kill him. Anyway, so he dies. But, spoiler, this, when he's down there, he's trying to escape, but even when he's trying to escape, he sees those weird ghastlies hovering around him, bobbing up and down and making this weird kind of chanting noise. And he starts to do it too, even though he's like, I am completely terrified out of my mind here. He starts to bob up and down and repeat what they're doing. Even when he breaks this weird, like, biological golden chain thing, it kind of seems like an umbilical cord. He finally cuts that and he's running up the stairs. The sound starts happening again, and he sees the lights going up and down again, and he starts to do it again. He can't escape it. You even said once he gets out of the pit, he's still in that repetitive kind of trance. I wonder, does that feel like a big... There's a lot of weird stuff going on, but that trance-like behavior, that kind of getting too close to this malevolent force, if it is malevolent, seems like it when you trap people in a pit, but if you get too in tune with evil, I think that is a big danger being explored in the weird.
Yeah, okay. So one thing that I think we maybe haven't talked about very much is around this time, especially, the great splash that hypnotism made on the kind of like mysticism, spiritual scene. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the deal with hypnotism, which, now we look at hypnotism and we're like, okay, a guy gets up on a stage and calls some people up and hypnotizes a few of them, and they take off their shoes or whatever. They just do stuff.
Fallacious.
But, yeah, I know. That was the best I could come up with in the moment. But, at the time, I feel like there's this real lack of comfort around the idea that your body can just be taken over by the words of another person or the actions of another person. You can slip into a dreamlike state and become something that is not yourself. And I feel like it's not, I don't want to say it's related, but I want to say it's not unrelated to the kind of zombie stories that we see coming out around this time. So I think you're right to pull on that string, but I wouldn't. It's interesting because this story mixes and matches so many things. I wouldn't necessarily call this like a fear of hypnotism story. It's just one of those numerous things, the fear of the wilderness, the exploration story, the journey to the north, as well as like the lost civilization aspect. I don't know. There's a lot going here, but I think we should maybe try to come up with a few groups to maybe, split up these stories and maybe lump them together into different shades of the weird.
Or we could just start learning how to do hypnotism. That's an option too. I think the fear of...
and subscribe.
Well, that's how they've been doing it. That's why I've been liking so many videos. Smash that like button wasn't doing it for me, but subliminal hypnotism was. I wonder you said maybe it's not a fear of hypnotism, but that made me think, when there's the fear of nature, there's the fear of something underneath, there's the fear of an intelligence, not just beyond ours, but kind of more fundamental to ours. That's scary. I think another thing that is scary is getting taken over by that intelligence we can't understand at all. It's almost like, you said, the fear of hypnotism is almost like the fear of possession too, I wonder. Because whether or not you can trust this hypnotist, whether you could call them a demon, who knows? But in this case, they are kind of demonic hypnotists.
I'll tell you what I was thinking about as I was reading this. Yeah, I took it as a word of warning. Never get to the point in your life where you wake up in a strange place, prisoner, and you see a dog bowl full of white gloopy stuff, and you think, yeah, I'm going to eat that. I don't know why, but that moment was one of the few visceral cringes I had in the entire anthology. Just like, don't do it, man. Don't do it. I know he had to do it to survive, but it tore me up.
It reminds me of my own dark, twisted past. I know I say that every episode recently, but as a kid, I thought this was this great snack in the middle of the night. So I'd wake up, my parents wouldn't hear me, and I'd go to the fridge and I'd get Wonder Bread and Cool Whip. And I just put Cool Whip in the Wonder Bread and then eat that.
Oh, yeah.
Now that's a snack. I could live in this pit. Put me in a pit.
Put me in a pit of Cool Whip and Wonder Bread. This episode brought to you by Cool Whip. Pair it with Wonder Bread.
I would be so stoked if we could get sponsored by Cool Whip. That's not even a joking matter, Zach.
I'll tell you what, there is one thing about this that I did really, really like, and I see this happening more in this anthology than maybe I feel like I see it in contemporary horror. But this idea that they're survivors from before the flood. I don't know why, but this connection to something that is both in the past and named, for me, hits a lot harder than a kind of, it's from the past, but it's from aeons ago in a mythical time and place that isn't, real or, connected to the real world in any way. When it's connected to some kind of thing that is outside of the story, it feels way cooler to me. And I think we saw this also in Mayrink's The Spider, actually, where he was talking about, the reporter, in order to get into the hotel room, made up this story about how the hour in which Jesus Christ was crucified, and descended into hell, that hour of that day every week is now an hour of witchcraft. And he claims that all of the people who died on that hour. He says, he makes, it's a lie. It's a total lie. And he makes that up. But when you connect as an author and you connect it to other things in an interesting way that exist outside of the story, I think it's awesome. I love that.
It reminds me too, we just talked to Chris from Speculative Reader and we read Book of Skulls together, and it reminds me of that. That was Chris's suggestion, extremely good book. But in that, there is this Brotherhood of Skulls, and it's like, where on earth did the Brotherhood of Skulls come from? Who knows? It's just some magical thing. And they say, no, it goes all the way back to Atlantis. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
The thing that Plato made up, but we're still searching for.
Every now and then I put on like an Atlantis, just a video, just one of those Atlantis videos that you see. And like, I see the words of Plato quoted as though it comes from like an ancient text, but they never attribute it to Plato. And they never mention that like those two sentences are literally the only thing he says about it. And that the frame of that is, it's like hearsay, even at the time, it's just funny to see the life that the Atlantis thing has taken on. But by all means, use it in these horror stories and these SF stories, because it's great when it connects. And maybe it's just the joy of feeling smart, like I got that reference.
That's us, Zach. That's basically us. We're the Beavis and Butthead. Weird fiction. Yeah. Go into the pit. All right. Don't want to turn into... The truth came out. I don't even know where to go after that. I was going to say something, and I can't remember what it was.
Oh, man.
Zach, I was looking up Merritt, and I think Merritt is super... We got to read a lot more Merritt. As I was saying earlier, when this came out, it was a huge success, along with the other book that I have up here here we go. The Moon Pool. Zach, Merritt sounds like the coolest, weird editor of all time. So I was reading through this. He was in law for a while, and then he was worked as an editor. And here's what this author writes. He says that he was a hypochondriac, and it says giving to trying out large quantities of over-the-counter medications and talking endlessly about his medical symptoms to anyone. Then it says, a true eccentric, Merritt, if that's not eccentric enough, Merritt had a near-obsessive need to try out any food, tobacco, or medications he found on his co-workers' desks. He also kept a large stock of musical instruments in a locked closet at work, and at least when Morrill Goddard wasn't around, would sometimes take them out and serenade his co-workers, occasionally donning a kilt to do so. So...
HR would have loved him.
He's like Michael Scott.
I know. A. Merritt in 2025. Did I create this meeting on HR with HR in my calendar, or did someone put that on there? I can't remember.
Good thing I brought my kilt. Yeah. Oh, that's why we're having a meeting. Sorry. So he sounds really great. I guess this was a funny thing that this biographer says too. So all of these pulp writers at this time were just turning out stuff, but this just made me feel completely ashamed of myself. I should be ashamed for many reasons, but this was great. He was like, Merritt was not that prolific. He was only coming out with maybe one novel, maybe two a year.
Yeah, they really knew how to crank out the content at that time. And I'll be honest with you. I don't think that this is one of the better written stories in the anthology. But there's something that's so raw about it that I find like really, really endearing. I saved this one sentence that I had to read it 3 times just to make sure that it was truly what I thought I read. It says, "The peaks grew closer, the heaps of ruins thicker. Something inexpressibly desolate hovered over them. Something reached from them that struck my heart like the touch of ghosts, so old that they could only be the ghosts of ghosts." I went on. It's like
ghosts.
Yeah, the touch of ghosts so old that they could only be the ghosts of ghosts. I love the absolute raw energy of some of these lines and these descriptions. The guy falling into the trance and just kind of scurrying like a dog when they sleep, or when you scratch that one spot and their legs start kicking. But these lines are not surviving a modern editor or even a editor. You know what I mean?
I'd circle that and put a star by it. The ghost of ghosts. The best of the best, the ghost of the ghosts.
The touch of ghosts so old they could only be the ghosts of ghosts. I love it.
That's A+.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that's about all I got on this guy. This was fun. And I am totally with you that we need to read some more books by A. Merritt. And I should probably figure out what A stands for, come to think of it. But,
Abraham Grace Merritt.
I just want something to look forward to in this life. Something,
Can't anymore, can you?
Oh, all right. I'll talk to you later, Bob.
Back to the pit. Talk to you later, Zach.